The desert was endless. Winds howled through the dunes, carrying waves of golden dust that swallowed the horizon. The sun hung low, a blazing disk that seemed determined to burn everything beneath it. And in the middle of it all walked Salih, a lone traveler. Each step sank deep into the burning sand, yet he never looked back. Because turning back was no longer an option. Salih once lived in a small village, a modest trader, neither rich nor poor, but deep inside, he always felt an emptiness that no wealth could fill. One night, as he sat beneath the stars, his father had told him, "My son, patience isn't just waiting. Patience means trusting Allah, believing that whatever happens, He knows best." Years passed. When Salih lost his father, those words returned to him like a whisper in the wind. But that night, he couldn't understand them. He stood beneath the sky and shouted, "Why me, Allah? Why my fathers?" There was no reply. Only the desert wind brushing against his tear-streaked face. Time moved on, his trade collapsed, debts grew. Those he once called friends disappeared, one by one. All that remained was an empty home and the echo of his father's voice. One morning, after Fajr prayer, Salih bowed his head in silence. "My Lord, why do you test me so harshly?" Again, there was only silence. But perhaps that silence was an answer. A call that said, "Come closer." Days later, a caravan passed through the village. Desperate for a way out, Salih joined them. Among the travelers was an old dervish, a man of wisdom, his eyes reflecting the calm of one who had seen both joy and sorrow. As they sat by the fire one night, the dervish said, "Patience has two forms, my son, one for what life brings and one for what your desires demand." Salih frowned. "And which is harder?" The dervish smiled faintly. "The second, for patience against your own self, that is the greatest jihad." Those words sank deep into his heart, though he didn't yet understand them. When the caravan reached a small oasis, Salih collapsed from exhaustion. He hadn't eaten in days. As he drifted into unconsciousness, he saw his father again, standing by a river of light. "My son," his father said, "patience is not silence. It is faith in the unseen mercy of Allah." He woke with tears in his eyes. The sun was rising. For the first time in years, Salih fell into sujood, his forehead pressed into the sand. "My Lord, I'm yours now." But his real trial had only just begun. He arrived at a small town and found work with a merchant. Each day he labored, lifting, counting, trading. Weeks passed quietly until one day a false rumor spread. "This man is a thief." No one defended him. People prefer judgment over truth. It's easier that way. Salih stayed silent. He didn't argue. He didn't curse. He simply whispered, "Allah knows." That night he sat alone, gazing into the flames of a lantern. The fire cracked softly, like a reminder patience burns, but it purifies. Months later, the truth surfaced. Salih was innocent. But by then, he had lost everything again, his job, his place, his name among the townspeople. And yet, strangely, he felt peace. So this, he said to himself, is what patience truly means, trusting Allah's justice when no one else does. Years passed. Salih's honesty became known far and wide. People began to respect him again, but it no longer mattered. He no longer sought their approval, he sought only Allah's pleasure. One night, under a sky painted with countless stars, Salih whispered a prayer. "My Lord, you gave me trials, and you gave me patience. I am pleased with you. Be pleased with me." A star fell across the sky, perhaps carrying his words straight to the throne. Patience was no longer a mere habit for Salih. It had become his very way of life. Years of hardship had shaped him like the wind shapes the dunes, soft on the surface, strong within. But Allah's tests never truly end. For every door of patience that opens, another one appears, this time testing the patience that has grown within the soul. One morning, after Fajr prayer, Salih sat quietly at the door of his humble home. From the distance came the sound of galloping hooves. A messenger rode into town, breathless and pale. Famine, a great drought is coming. The people froze. The rains had stopped for months. The earth had cracked open. Fear spread through the streets faster than the wind. Panic took over. People began hoarding whatever food they had, locking their doors, protecting their wealth. But Salih did the opposite. He opened his storage and said, "Provision comes from Allah. I will not withhold what He has given." He began giving away his sacks of grain to the poor and the hungry. Some called him a fool. "Your patience will starve you," they mocked. But Salih smiled. "If I go hungry, Allah will grant me patience. If I am full, He will grant me gratitude." Days passed, the famine hit hard. Children's laughter faded. The air grew dry and heavy with silence. Yet among all the homes that had gone empty, Salih's small house still smelled of bread. Every day, somehow, there was something to share. One night, a neighbor peeked through his window, curious. Inside, Salih was kneeling, his hands raised high. "My Lord," he whispered, "I gave because I trust your endless hand." The next morning, the sky changed. Clouds began to gather for the first time in months. Then a drop of rain fell. Then another, and another. Soon the heavens opened and rain poured down. The earth drank like a thirsty soul. Children ran through the streets, laughing and crying at once. Someone shouted. Allah accepted Salih's prayer. But Salih lowered his head and said softly, "Not mine, Allah accepts the prayers of those who are patient." The famine ended. The village healed. Salih became known not as a trader, but as a man of faith and wisdom. People came to him for advice. But whenever they praised him, he would only smile and say, "I am nothing but a servant." The greatest honor for a servant is the pleasure of his Lord. One day, a young man approached him and asked, "Master, you have been patient all your life. But why isn't patience just doing nothing and waiting?" Salih smiled gently. "No, my son, patience is not standing still. It is acting with faith, striving while trusting Allah's decree. To pray, to work, to hope, and then to surrender the outcome." The young man nodded, not fully understanding. But those words would linger in his heart for years to come. Time passed. Salih grew old. His beard turned white, his eyes softened, but his heart glowed brighter than ever. Every morning began with sujud, every night ended with shukr. One night he dreamed again, the same radiant face he once saw years ago, his father. The old man's eyes shone like dawn. "My son," he said, "your trial is over. Now comes the reward of your patience." Salih looked confused. "What do you mean, father?" "Patience blossoms not only in this world, but in the gardens of the next. Every tear you shed has planted a flower there. And now the garden awaits you." When he woke, his eyes were wet. He prayed Fajr one last time with deep stillness in his heart. Then, without saying a word, he stepped outside and began walking. He walked toward the same desert where his journey had once begun. The wind welcomed him like an old friend. Every step carried the weight of a life lived in faith. Every grain of sand whispered a memory. He climbed a tall dune. The sun was rising, painting the horizon in gold. Salih smiled. "My Lord," he said softly, "at the end of every hardship, I found you. Every pain was a path that led me to know you." He closed his eyes. A flock of birds soared into the sky. The wind lifted his name and carried it far across the desert. And his smile never faded. Days later, villagers found him lying peacefully upon the sand. There was no gold, no wealth, only a small tasbih and a folded note beside him. It read, "Patience is trusting in Allah, and I have trusted him." From that day on, every dawn prayer in that village began with a whisper of his name. The man who once walked alone had taught an entire town how to wait with faith, not fear. And the night sky above them shone a little brighter. Perhaps it was the light of those who had endured, those who had learned to be patient.